So thanks for coming. Welcome. I know I'm standing between you all and the last few sessions of the conference today. Just to introduce myself, my name is John Wren. I'm the CTO for IT at Flex. I've been with the company for the last 18 years and have had multiple roles within IT during that time. I just ran enterprise applications for the last 5.5 years, where Tableau was part of our product set and part of my enterprise applications group. Some of the team are actually here. And I recently took on the role of CTO just in the last quarter. Just a little bit about Flex. We're a sketch-to-scale solutions provider across design and manufacturing. We're a global company. And I've got a short video here just to share a little bit more about the company.
In this new age, the only constant is revolutionary change. And today, it's changing faster than ever before. Converging new forces of seismic scale are disrupting the landscape, fundamentally reshaping the way we live and work. We call it the age of intelligence. The emerging ecosystem of smart, dynamic technologies that are interconnecting every part of our world. It's a profound transition that creates unprecedented opportunities. To seize them demands both vision and the ability to identify, cultivate, and commercialize ideas at every stage of new product development. This is Sketch to Scale. A fully integrated system of capabilities and core technologies which can be applied collectively or adapted to any phase of product creation. It utilizes our unique knowledge, resources, and expertise from a broad range of industries and geographies to anticipate future needs and risk, stay ahead of short innovation cycles, and capitalize on macro trends and emerging technologies. It's our system of operation and your blueprint for success, delivering the innovation, quality, and reliability needed to produce world-class products. During this pivotal moment in history, the greatest achievements will not be built in isolation, but through collaboration, where together we can turn ideas into breakthroughs that enrich our lives and build a better, smarter world for us all.
So as that video tells a little bit about, Flex, we're as a supply chain and design and large-scale manufacturing company. We're $24 billion in revenue. We operate in over 100 sites in 30 countries worldwide. We've got 200,000 people, and that's growing, and about 1,000 customers. We're across 12 industry segments. These are numbers of customers in all those segments. As you see, it's a broad range of different industries. Our medical and automotive segment is two of the largest growing segments and fastest growing segments currently. But we've also been in telecom, networking, enterprise compute for a long time, and as part of the traditional electronics business where Flex started. What it means for us is that we're spread across a lot of different technologies and a lot of different industries. And to survive now in the age of intelligence, we build products across these industries and using those technologies for our diverse customer base. What that means is we can cross-collaborate across these technologies on behalf of customers and on behalf of the industries that we serve. As an example, for autonomous vehicles, we would use radar, 5G technology, telecom technology, server and storage, and compute technology to build autonomous vehicles on behalf of a customer base. And we do that at operation scale for the car industry. we use these technologies to collaborate and to help diversify the products that we build. This is a sample of our diverse customer base. As you can see, it's spread across a lot of different industries and a lot of different product ranges that we design, build, and ship on behalf of our customer base. So what does that mean? Because we manage supply chains for about 1,000 customers, that's a lot of complexity. So we have to design products and collaborate with our customers. We then source and procure material for the products that we manufacture. We inbound them into our manufacturing locations. We manufacture and then we distribute either direct to a customer or, depending on the industry, depending on the customer base, into their retail channels. So that's a huge challenge. Supply chain management is a core competency of the company. But 3 years ago, we were given a challenge by our management teams in operations and in supply chain to come up with effectively what became known as Pulse. And the challenge was, how could we effectively digitize the supply chain? How could we take what we were doing in the silos of the various teams that managed supply chain, managed our customers, and take the data that they were using in our operational systems and feed that into a visualization system to help manage inventory and supply and shipments to customers in a more efficient way. The concept we came up with was Pulse. And before Pulse, as I mentioned, it was quite difficult to get data from our operational systems, which were needed to manage our supply chain, manage operations at a site level, all the way through to our analytics environments, and to answer even a question of how much inventory did we have on hand at any one time. After Pulse, that became a lot easier. So we would have taken maybe a week to get answers around inventory, to get visibility on inventory, to answer supply chain questions on a customer's behalf. After Pulse and how we've collated the data, how we've integrated it to our operational systems, and effectively how we've used Tableau to now visualize the data, we now get answers in minutes. So our supply chain teams, our program management teams, and our business development organizations that run our customer base now see that data in near real time. So how do we do it? So initially, Pulse was a concept. So it was a concept of how could we surface data, how could we agree on the metrics that we were managing our supply chain with, and how could we come up with alignment on what those metrics were. So the initial months in preparing for the eventual launch of Pulse was bringing teams together from operations, from procurement, from inventory management, from commodity management, and linking them up with IT to ideate on a new visualization of those metrics. We had to map the data, align to the data that we were collecting and collating from our operational systems. And then we ideated on the visualizations. So Tableau became a key core part of that ideation process as we visualized what the future could look like from a digitized supply chain. And it also became a working mechanism to help the teams produce visualizations. We also sourced technology for touchscreen technology, and we came up with a concept initially of Pulse being a place and a room. So our initial deployment, we initially deployed Pulse in our campus in Milpitas in California, and that was the first room. So it's a half-moon-shaped room of about 22 screens where we've surfaced the data on those screens. And as I mentioned, through the ideation process, we came up with the initial set of metrics that we began to measure. And so those metrics initially were 3, then there were 10, and we're now up to 70. And how we aligned on those metrics was we had teams that were put together in collaboration with our supply chain teams and our operations teams, and we came up with a concept of ambassadors. So every key metric that we now manage at a corporate level for supply chain, has an owner, effectively, and that owner is an ambassador. And then we've then put teams around them of SMEs where we've got expertise depending on the particular metric, whether it's from engineering, operations, IT, and supply chain. And they've agreed on how the calculation for that metric should be. They've also agreed on the visualization. So they've agreed on how a metric should be visualized. We've used Tableau to effectively visualize that metric, and then they're aligned on how it should be measured. That then had to get disseminated into the sites and into our operations teams so that they could agree on now measuring that metric. And so over time, what's happened as we've rolled Pulse out, the teams at the sites have now retired effectively how they were measuring pre-Pulse going live. So as I mentioned, it took about 8 months for the initial Pulse launch and the initial Pulse location being in California at our headquarters. But since then, we've rolled Pulse out to 9 centers globally. So we've put it into our manufacturing campuses, our large campuses in Mexico, in China, and India. And so now Pulse is spread out to those centers. Pulse as a room effectively is a collaboration space. We didn't want it to be a control tower. The decisions that are made in a Pulse center are made in collaboration with work groups that we bring into the Pulse center. And then we also have video conferencing capabilities for anyone remote associated with a metric. And the process that we've gone through over the last 3 years is, as we've come up with metrics that we want to measure, we've used the Pulse centers as effectively collaborative workspaces to ideate, to solve the particular problem or issues associated with that metric, and then come up with alignment. Since then, we've obviously grown that to 70 metrics, as I mentioned. We use the Pulse centers as customer visit centers, support centers for any institutions that support Flex with services. And as you can see, there's been 800 campus visits alone in the California center in Milpitas. But we haven't stopped there. So we've also deployed Pulse to 5,500 users globally. So that's expanded outside of the centers themselves. So how do we do that? So we've also deployed Pulse now on a desktop product. Again, using Tableau. Tableau effectively is the fabric that holds Pulse together. And so we've rolled Pulse out using the same fabric to a desktop product. It's tracking the same 70 metrics globally. It's using the same backend for integrations. So when you're in a room and you're in a room in a Pulse center and you're looking at a metric, you're going to see that exact same metric refreshed and updated in the same real time on your desktop as within the center itself. And we haven't stopped there. We've also rolled Pulse out on mobile. So we've a subset of these metrics that are more time sensitive, that are needed by our executive team and the senior management teams across the functions that support Pulse. And we've deployed Pulse on mobile for those. So as I mentioned, it's a subset of the metrics, but it also means for those metrics, they're accessible anytime, anywhere. And again, they use the same backend, and they're refreshed at the same rate as in the centers and as on the desktop product. And then we've also created a web front end for discoverability. So if you're a user in Pulse, you have a role. You may be a buyer, you may be a planner, you may be an engineer, an operations person, or you may have responsibility for a customer. You have a profile, and you are given access to a certain amount of metrics associated with that profile. So this is a certain view. Tableau is surfaced when you click on any of these icons and you click on any of your metrics as a user. And again, that's deployed on the desktop product as well as the mobile product. So besides the dashboards and the visualizations that get surfaced through the Tableau visualizations on Pulse, we've also created an action tracker. This is probably one of the key reasons why Pulse has been so successful at Flex, because it allows users and people who are within the Pulse environment, when they see an issue and they have to resolve it around a metric, they can create an action. That action is then sent from the Pulse workbench effectively to another user within the Pulse environment. And this is tracked. As you can see there, we're live 3 years. We've over 190,000 actions tracked on Pulse with a value of about $8 billion in inventory. So that is whether we would disposition inventory where it's needed from one site to another. We may pull inventory in from a vendor if it's needed in manufacturing on behalf of a customer. So there's a multitude of actions that can happen associated with managing a supply chain for a customer. And it's all tracked through the action tracker. And so where are we going? We also have a concept now of using API extensions through Tableau to be able to do write back. So currently, there's a version of this in place, but we're going to get a bit more sophisticated and a bit more efficient with the use of API extensions. And so our intent, and it's currently being built right now, is that we would take the actions from the action tracker and effectively write back that action to the source system. So that would be an ERP system or a procurement environment or an inventory system. And we will take that action where it has information on the action related to a part, related to a quantity, and related to what we want to do with that particular action. And it'll then automate that write back. So we effectively want to create a closed loop environment between Pulse and the operational systems that it's supporting. The intent over time would be that if you're a user in Pulse, you effectively don't need to come out of the environment. You use Pulse as your workbench, you use Pulse as your insight into what's going on with your site or your customer, and Pulse will surface the relevant data that you need. But also on the back end, now when you have to take action, you can take action and effectively have that right back to an operational environment that you now don't need to log into anymore. So that's our intent. We were awarded this year at Gartner's conference, so it's being recognized within the industry. We're making a huge difference, obviously, to our customers and to our sites, and it's been a great journey so far, and we want to do more. So I'll show maybe just another video, a short video. This is our Pulse Center in Guadalajara in Mexico. So why Tableau? So Tableau has been, as I mentioned, part of the fabric since we started the concept of Pulse, since we went through the initial workshops, since we decided on what we were going to measure, and then once we decided on the screens and how we were going to publish that data. Obviously, it's also been part of the fabric of the desktop product and how we intend to go forward with Tableau. It's visually easy to use. The SME teams, the business teams adopted it very early on, and it's been part of their journey and part of our journey within IT as well. It's self-service. The business teams can use it. We have a center of excellence within IT for Tableau, but Pulse has now matured into a solution and into an environment where the business SME teams effectively now create further content, and they effectively are the experts at this point for Pulse and Tableau. The social community support within the Tableau community is incredible, and our team, and I know the business teams, use it to ask all sorts of crazy questions like the one up here, and effectively get answers. So not only from, I think, the product roadmap that Tableau has supported us on, but also the technical support, and then obviously the community are the avenues where we get true support through our journey. And where's that journey going to take us? So I spoke about starting 3 years ago with Tableau as initially we thought maybe as an application. What it's turned out to be is Tableau as a platform. We organized ourselves around Pulse. We organized ourselves around the metrics that we were going to measure. And effectively now Pulse has become part of the culture of the company. Pulse is now a methodology within the company. As I mentioned, we rolled out the platform not only from the centers, but also on the desktop and on the mobile. So it's a true multi-environment platform where Tableau is at the core. We developed the action tracker. We developed the mobile product. And actually this year, we actually went into a little bit of a redesign on some of the metrics. So again, using design thinking, using a better UI experience, and actually with the help of Tableau, we've redefined some of how the screens are looking, some of how the dashboards are looking to get a little bit more ease of use on the dashboards. Where do we want to go next? So we want to use alerting in more than it is today, so we can actually surface anomalies and issues to those user profiles where necessary and be very targeted around that. We do have a level of alerting going on in the environment today, but we want to do a lot more, and using the alerting functionality within Tableau will help that. We've been in the alpha program for NLP, and we see that as a key differentiator and certainly part of the product roadmap for Pulse. The reason being is in a lot of the metrics, they're very mature now in how we're measuring them. However, you can always ask another question, and there is always another question to be asked, whether it's by our executives, whether it's by the functional teams that use the environment, and therefore we see the use of NLP in that space, where you have your dashboard, you have your measurement, but there's always a what-if scenario, and there's always something else that you're going to be able to discover. And so we see the advent of NLP now in the beta program, and hopefully through its release next year, as being part of our journey as well that we want to release within Pulse. Extensions, as I mentioned, and the write-back feature, we are going to use that quite intently within the environment. We've also been doing experimentation on multi-immersive technologies, so to be able to visualize areas like warehouses, right? So you take that data set now that we're using in Pulse, and could you use 3D technology to be able to visualize and immerse yourself and maybe get some further insights that you're not able to get through the dashboards. So we'll see where Tableau goes with that as well. We also want to get into predictive analytics. So there's a level of predictability in what we're measuring today, but obviously within a supply chain environment and a fast-moving environment like Flex, any insight and any predictability that we can build into the platform and build into the technology to give that insight back to the user base is something that we're researching on and we're doing a lot of proof of concepts on. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, Flex is sketch to scale. So the majority of the work currently where we focused from a business perspective on Pulse has been on the scale side of the business. That's the large-scale manufacturing, the large-scale distribution of our products to our customer base. We are now focusing on this on the sketch side, so the design side of the business. So where we would design products for customers, where we would source components, where the 3,500 design engineers and how their work within their environment, can we effectively deploy Pulse in that area and help the designing of our products and our collaboration with customers, and to do that in a more efficient way. And so, while the technology and Tableau and what we've done with Pulse is obviously key, it's nothing without the people. And I think the journey that we've gone on from the collaboration with all of the various business groups involved, with the collaboration with Tableau as a key supplier to us, ultimately, if we didn't align on what we were going to measure, if we didn't align on the right calculations to make, and ultimately, if we didn't feed that back in a collaborative way back to our operations and our sites, it wouldn't have worked. So collaboration has been key. The steering group and steering management team on Pulse still meet every month. And so while there was a huge focus on that design, I didn't do that. A huge focus on that at the beginning of the process, it still happens today. And so that level of management around Pulse and that level of focus has not gone away. As you can see from our roadmap and our journey, there's actually a lot more to do. There's a lot of work left still. And so, to finish, this is a quote from our CEO, Mike McNamara. Ultimately, as we've been hearing through the keynote yesterday, every company is a data-driven company at this point. We have a lot of data in Flex, and we want to be able to surface that, and we want to be able to get at it in a more real-time and a near real-time basis. We started a journey with Pulse, and we've had great success, but we won't slow down, and we're going to continue. Thank you very much. So I'll take questions if there's any. There's a few. Yeah, I think you were first.
Yes, regarding the extension API, I guess a two-pronged question. What's your use cases on the write-back side? On the write-back, and then also, are there any other extensions that you're looking at?
So on the write-back side, so the data that we're taking is from our ERP systems, it's from our planning environments, our procurement systems. So ultimately, the action tracker on Pulse, that tracks what actions need to take. So if a buyer needs to reschedule incoming inventory with a vendor, then they have to effectively put in that transaction in our ERP environment. So the data that's in the action tracker is actually there, that's necessary for that transaction. And so what we want to be able to do is to take that data, build an API, and feed that back into the ERP system in that example, and then be able to effectively commit the transaction. So the buyer in that case, within Pulse, would actually just stay in Pulse. So they would commit the transaction and have it right back. I think to answer your second part, we're looking at extensions across the board within the environment. So whatever operational systems are connected into Pulse, where we're surfacing data, if they have a transactional component to them, we want to be able to write back to all of those. I think once we begin to get a little bit more deeper on the design side, on the sketch side of where we want to go with Pulse, I think we'll end up, that's a different set of systems. That's design and engineering systems and its sourcing systems for components. And so I think that'll bring another set of challenges where I see extensions being used as well. Okay. Yeah.
How do you affect all the sensors that you're showing your 3D factory? How do you know what's there, what's not there? Are you doing machine connections to know what's going on live in your factories?
So we're not live with any of the 3D environments yet. The idea with that would be to take the existing data set and then produce it in a 3D environment where you might get other insights. So the little screenshot I showed was an example where it would be like a warehouse and an inventory, and through an easy color code system, you could say what was high running parts, low running parts. And so if you were in that data set in a 3D environment, then you would see that visually. Whereas today, you kind of have to look at that through a dashboard. Now, the dashboard is incredibly insightful compared to the previous way of doing it, which was probably a spreadsheet. But that's kind of the thinking of where we want to use it.
Do you have any lock data connections for machine right now?
Not currently, no, not currently. Yeah, on the back.
First of all, I think it's a fantastic concept you guys have there, and congratulations on the Gartner Award.
Thank you.
In a world where everything is getting smaller on a phone, you guys went the opposite way and blew it full out.
Right.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
But I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit about the 70 KPIs that you have in place today. I think 70 was the term.
Yeah.
And so without knowing the details of the business, it feels like a lot of KPIs. And so is there an opportunity to rationalize, or what justified the sheer depth of KPIs? Maybe you can kind of profile what those are. And were those KPIs that you internally established just based on the nature of your business, or did you partner, or are they industry standard?
They're effectively KPIs that we would have measured anyway, or we were measuring anyway, just not in a collated and a consolidated way that we now surface in the Pulse platform. They're effectively across supply chain. So the reason for the 70 is that the procurement team have a set of KPIs within that as a subset. The commodity management group would have a subset. Operations, manufacturing operations have a subset. Quality have a subset, so how the quality of the product on the back end once we produce finished goods, and then distribution, right? So how are we doing with shipments? How are we doing out in the retail channels if we're shipping to retail, or how are we doing with shipments to direct to customers? So examples would be work order shortages. So in our environment, if we produce a work order for a customer shipment or a customer order, that work order effectively pulls all of the material that's needed within a factory, and it's sent down to the factory floor. A common issue in manufacturing is that you're short a component or a part in order to fulfill that build. And therefore, if you're short a key component, you can't produce a build, so the build gets delayed. So as an example, then that would be one key metric, obviously, for both operations and for the procurement organization to look at to see if they can fulfill that shortage.
So it's truly end-to-end plant sourcing delivery.
It is, yes. Yeah, that's the reason for the number. I think in terms of consolidation, of course, we can. We had requests for more. We stopped at 70 over the last year, so we wanted to mature those. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Hi.
I think you mentioned you have 9 pulse centers now, so I'm assuming those are the big wall.
They're the physical rooms, yeah.
Is there any notion of connectivity between them across the sites for collaboration? So if one person on one side is looking through a dashboard, will the other sites see that same view?
Yes. So because it's the same fabric and it's the same connectivity to the source systems, then if they pull up a particular metric and they obviously would then filter it, right? So if the metric would be for one customer or one customer across 3 sites, and if both centers want to look at that same data, then all they have to do is agree on what the filters are, and they'll pull up the same dashboard and the same refresh rate they'll see on both sides.
Another question.
Yeah.
Can you describe how you're using Tableau to visualize planning data?
Planning data.
Demand planning, account planning, forecast.
So we have operational environments that do that, right? We have an advanced planning tool. So from an operations perspective, that does the initial, let's say, calculation on maybe what a forecast would look like for a particular set of demand for a customer. Tableau is showing anomalies with that, right? So it's showing any issues. However, the operational system hasn't gone away, right? We still produce the initial results in the operational system and then surface it in Tableau. Okay. Yeah.
So I know that on the roadmap you said that you aim to deliver Tableau as an app eventually once you have the right back extension.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, what was the kind of decision-making process behind that? Because one way you could do it is you could embed right back in the Tableau dashboard, or you could embed the Tableau dashboard in like a custom portal or a custom page, right? So both of them have kind of pros and cons. Why you chose one rather than the other?
I think we've been experimenting with it throughout this year, and I think that's the avenue we've gone down in terms of an efficient use of the write back feature. However, there's more to do. It's not fully live across the 70 metrics. It's not fully live even in terms of connectivity to the operational systems. But I think that was the avenue we went down. It's been successful in some of the apps that we've connected to so far. The team that are doing it are here, so you could probably ask them a little bit more later. But yeah, as I said, it's successful on the ones we've tried so far, and I think that's the avenue we're taking right now. Yeah. Yep.
So I work for a logistics company, and 5 months ago, our department was tasked to put together, we pulled all of our data from our accounting system because it was the easiest place that everything flowed through.
Yeah.
But we couldn't get down to the level of detail that we needed for the shipments. So now we have gone to all of our operational systems, and knowing being in supply chain management, that's several different systems. So
Yes.
we're trying to pull 16 data sources together right now. What did you use to try to do that? Because I know you had to have several data sources and systems as well.
We do.
I mean, that's the Tableau part is the beautiful part.
It's getting the data, yeah.
Yeah. and 5 months of misery has occurred right now. And we just initiated last week our first Tableau
View.
dashboard with it, right?
Right.
But now we have to go back and really start tying all the different fields. We pretty much maybe brought in 10 fields to start from
Right.
each system.
Yep. I mean, as an integration tool, we're using AlterX.
That's what we did.
Okay, yeah. And there's others. We have Informatica as an ETL tool as well from our source systems into our enterprise data warehouse. That is also a source for some of these metrics. I agree with you though. The mapping process and the alignment is all the heavy lifting at the start of an initiative like this. Before we went live in July 2015 on Pulse, there was probably 8 months of work with exactly similarly as you described, of alignment on what we were going to measure, sourcing that data, ensuring that the right fields were being surfaced, the data was being collated and consolidated.
What about the data cleanup during that time?
That was all part of it.
Covered a lot.
That was all part of it too. I think as I mentioned, we came up with this concept early on about ambassadors because at a corporate level, depending on the corporate function, they're going to have a certain way that they want to measure a metric. However, at a site level, that's a totally different view. And so a key part of the process has been the alignment and the population of effectively these metric teams with an ambassador that owns the metric and owns the measurement of it and the calculation of it, and actually also owns the monitoring of it. That was another key learning, I think, over the years, which was once a metric's actually out there, is it being used, right? So we track usage of Pulse, we track views on Tableau, and we track, is that metric now actually holding, right? And in some cases, we've taken metrics out, or we've had to realign on a measurement. But that's all down to the collaboration. I agree, it's not an easy process, but that's part of our journey.
We're actually still living and walking right now. How many people did you have on your team, out of curiosity, that did that?
I would say Between IT and the business team, when we were doing a lot of that initial year and a half where we got to kind of that footprint of the 70, we probably had about 60 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have 6.
Okay. It's not 60 now. We've reduced it, but
Right. Wow.
yeah.
So going back to your KPIs, you had mentioned that pretty high number. Assuming across the supply chain, you've got finance information, security, procurement, et cetera.
Yes.
That means non-standardization of data. When we put those things into Tableau, often it can be a little overwhelming. Can you speak to, as an executive, both as a contributor and also a receiver of that information, how you prefer or how your executive team prefers to see that in a standardized way that is not so overwhelming with all of those data points?
The executive team have effectively a subset of the metrics, right? So they don't look at the 70. The 70 is across the actual functional teams, the people who actually manage either supply chain or manufacturing or operations or distribution on behalf of a customer or a site. So you know, that end-to-end kind of process is the reason why there's 70 and how they look at those metrics. The executive team look at a subset of that. And a good example of that is probably the mobile app that we produced, which again, when we got the original kind of request and we had that as part of the roadmap, it was like, put the 70 metrics on the mobile app, right? And the reality is it's not needed, right? Some of the metrics don't only change once a week, or maybe they're only looked at, or they're primarily looked at month end or at a product launch. However, we did find, again, through iteration and through collaboration with the executive team, that look, there's 15 for sure right now that are time sensitive, that actually, hours in a day could impact a decision or not, and therefore visibility into those metrics are key. So I suppose we try to hold off on overwhelming by being a bit more specific on what's delivered on the mobile app or what's delivered on an executive dashboard.
So when you get to the executive dashboard level, I'm assuming that there is something from finance and something from security, for instance. How have you taken, or how was the collaboration completed to even get standardization on those KPIs? So even as far down into the detail of showing dollars versus percents versus like energy savings, et cetera?
It's all back to those SME teams. So it's all back to what we've done is we've effectively created a team for every metric, right? And so, as I mentioned, when we were initially producing this, it was a large group. Now it's like 5 or 6 people, right, who have existing roles or jobs. They have a day job, but they're responsible for that metric. So that same metric is what gets on an executive dashboard. It's not, we don't differentiate between the two. What we have done on behalf of the executives, though, is that we've created what we call like a carousel. So it's a subset of the metrics on an executive dashboard, and it just runs all the time. So it refreshes, and so they don't have to click into it, it just runs. I mean, they can stop it and they can click in if they need to, but in their meeting rooms or in their offices, this carousel runs and refreshes as Pulse is refreshing.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Oops. Just one more down here.
So in the example that you showed, you were able to create actions.
Yes.
One of the challenges that I have with the 64 metrics that my team is trying to measure, and some of the feedback we're getting from our field ops managers, is in using the Tableau as the tool, we want to see right now data. So in the model that you show, is your data like current, like right now, or is it end of business yesterday data?
Again, it depends on the metric, and we have this argument all the time, right? The business are saying we want to see the data that exists in an operational system right now, and we want that in Pulse and effectively on a Tableau dashboard. And while we strive to get the data as near real time as possible, we always go back and ask, okay, well, what would you do with it?
That's the question that always comes up. But
yeah.
When you have the module here to create an action, I could see why the two would go together. But.
Yeah. And the reality is not all the 70 metrics are needed in that actual real time. In some cases, the trend is more important. And for sure, an anomaly against a particular metric or a calculation is more important. Not necessarily that you need the data right now based on a transaction that just happened in the ERP system.
No, I agree 100%, and it's good to get that kind of feedback from someone at your level, so I can take that back.
All right.
Thank you.
You're going to quote me, are you?
I may.
Yeah. Did you have? Okay. Yeah.
You mentioned that the business SMEs are now the experts in Tableau. Can you comment on how long that migration process took to get them up to that point, and roughly how many do you have within that business SME?
How long? I would say maybe 18 months through the journey of Pulse. I would say certainly now in the last 18 months, it's become a very mature platform. We haven't had to have an army of IT people effectively in the environment. We still obviously do support it, and we still get a lot, as you see from the roadmap. But that's where our focus is, right, from an IT perspective. It's like, the future on the technology side, right, extensions or NLP, and that's where we're focused. We would envisage a body of work that will come back in again, and our involvement to be high. But on the SME side, the estimate on the amount currently, yeah, that's a good. We have 300 developer licenses, right, and a lot of them are in the business as well. So that may be a good ratio. 5,500 users, 300 developers. Any more questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time.